She floats across the stage, leaving a golden wake, and I am, of course, talking about Taylor Swift, America's favorite billionaire. That's who we're going to be talking about today because she just released a new album not that long ago, and I've had a chance to listen to it a few times and really stew and think about what's on that album. So I wanted to go over it in the tier list format and list my favorites, some that I like, and then some that I really don't like, because this album has some real bad songs on it. Now, I've been a fan of Taylor Swift since 2006. I was there in the debut days. I was one of the original Swifties back before we even had a name. I don't really consider myself a Swiftie as much anymore because I just don't follow her as close as I used to. So I know this album is a big favorite of a lot of her fans, and I know that this one has set many, many records. However, this just isn't a favorite of mine. So I'll be approaching it from a musician standpoint. S and A rank are typically songs I go back and listen to a second, third, fourth, even fifth time. In the case of S rank songs, I usually put those on my playlist and they end up being played for many, many years. I still have some of the debut songs on my playlists. And anything below S and A, I'll probably listen to sometimes, and as you get down to like C, D, and F, probably not going to listen to any of those again. So that's how I'm going to be approaching this tier list, and without further ado, let's get into it. So the first song that's on the album is Fortnight, which features Post Malone, and I give this one an immediate S rank. It is so beautiful. The vibes are incredible. I really enjoy the musical arrangement of this one, the harmonies. Her voice and Post Malone's voice work so well together, and it's always such a fun thing to see artists collaborate. And I would say that this one just really stood out to me immediately for how the ambience of this song is. Like, the ambience is incredible. S tier all the way. I've already listened to this one a ton. It's been stuck in my head for about a week. Very good song. The next one on the list is the title track of this album, The Tortured Poets Department. I'm going to give this one an A tier. The memeable lyrics aside, the musical elements are really good, and I really enjoy the vibes of this one. The melody is also nice, but it's not one that I'm necessarily going to listen to a lot, but I certainly do like the vibes. The next one we have is My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, and I'm going to put this one into C tier. I think musically, in terms of the musical elements, this one's pretty meh. I didn't much care for the way this one sounded. It's not really my style, not really my thing. The fourth track on this album is Down Bad, and I'm going to give that one somewhere between an A tier and a B tier. The supporting instruments in this one are really cool, and the intro is awesome. Which is more or less really the saving grace of this one, because the rest of the music I'm not really too big of a fan of, but I really do enjoy the backing instruments on this one. And the chorus is also really catchy to almost a problematic extent. I find myself humming this one a lot, and it gets stuck in my head kind of right next to Fortnite. So the supporting instruments and the chorus kind of save the vibe for me and kind of put it in between an A and a B. The next one in line is So Long London, and this one, just not my vibes at all. It's going to be a D tier because I think the vibes are weird. I think most of the songs that are on this album sound like this, which I know is probably going to get me some flack. I don't know how many people are going to see this video, but I know it's an unpopular thing to dislike this new album, but I'm also just not a fan of the sad girl piano. So this isn't my vibe. If you like it, totally cool. Well within your rights to like it. Just not really what I want out of music. So D tier. I love the memes that have come out of this one. The lyrics, specifically the chorus about how she's having his baby, that gets stuck in my head. But I'm not really a fan of the song other than that. It's just that one line that I think is kind of funny, and I just kind of like the memes that are there. But the rest of the song is just really not my style, and I just don't particularly like it, so this one's going to rank in as another D tier. So the seventh track on this album is Fresh Out the Slammer, and this one really felt like it needed some more rhythm to it. It just felt like the rhythm was really lacking, and especially right after the hook, the standard Taylor Swift ah hook that she uses in a lot of her other music, which is something I'm really a sucker for. I think it works super, super well. So I originally was going to rate this one as a D tier, but I wanted to give it a little bit higher. But I really think that if they would have had a different rhythm to this one and had it be a little bit more punchy with some drums, it would have ranked higher for me personally. And it really felt like they were going to have some of those drums right after that hook, but then they cut it to kind of match the boring vibes of the rest of this album. So kind of a loss in my book. So this one gets a between a C and a D. I think Florida was a really interesting song, and I really enjoyed the feature of Florence and the Machine because I've never been a super huge Florence fan. I've heard some of their stuff on the radio back in the days before I started really listening to Spotify. And I really liked Dog Days. At least I think that's the name of that song. But I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was a great song, and I think her voice is awesome. but this particular song kind of sucks. I really didn't like this one. I think Florence is great, but this just isn't it. The hook is really cool and the chorus is pretty cool, but I think overall this just does not work, at least for me. So first F tier of the tier list. Guilty as Sin. Originally, I gave this one an A tier, but I had to go listen to it again because my notes on this one, I was a little bit kind of hazy on what I thought about it. And I think I'm going to bump this one up at least half a tier. I kind of want it to sit right on that S and A tier boundary. I'm probably going to give it an S tier because the rhythmic elements on this one and the presence of bass and the way that this one feels, like the musical feeling that goes with this, I think is so good, and it's so different from some of the rest of what's on this album with just it being sad piano music. And I think the chorus is really catchy, and I like this one a lot. It has a great flow, it has heart to it, it feels like there's an emotion behind it. I think that's something that lacks in a lot of the music that's on this album, and I just don't think there's really any heart to it, and there's no musical... it lacks musical complexity that I'm looking for and that I particularly like. So this one, I think I'm going to give it an S tier, even though originally I was going to rank it lower. Who's Afraid of Little Old Me was a disappointment after Guilty as Sin. Originally, I had this one ranked as an F tier because the jump between Guilty as Sin and Little Old Me, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, just did not speak to me at all. The structure is really good, and I really like the general flow of it in terms of how the music is actually structured, verse, chorus, and so on. But just the vibes, they're just not my vibes, not really my thing. I love some of the memes that have come out of this one, even though they're kind of roasting, but this just isn't it for me, so I'm giving this one a D tier. I Can Fix Him, no really I can. Just another one that just was not my vibe. I think this one had some good swing to it, and it felt like there was some heart in it, and I did like some of the musicality of this one, but the vibes are just meh. Like I just can't relate to it, so I'm giving this one, I think the swing and kind of the way that the music feels bumps this up from an F, but it's still, it straddles the D and F barrier. loml, or Love of My Life, or Loss of My Life, as we find out if we listen to the song. This one kind of changes meaning over time, which is one of the things that I think makes this one actually really good and really cool. And I like this one quite a bit. And even though this is kind of the sad girl piano type of deal, I think this one's pretty good. I think all the songs on this album that sound like this one, this is the best one of all of them. And because it really felt like this one had heart. There's some of the songs that are on here that we'll get to a little bit later on just kind of feel empty, and like her heart wasn't really in it when she was either writing it or performing it, or maybe just it was bad production quality, I don't really know. But this one really had some emotion behind it, and I actually did like this one quite a bit, so I'm giving this one an A tier. I also want to say that this one in particular, I think, is one of those ones that tells more of a story than some of the other music that's on this album. And at least in a story that I could care about. And I think part of why I care about this one over some of the other songs that are on here is that this one, because the music kind of speaks to me, the lyrics can speak to me more. The music has to speak to me first because of my auditory processing issues that I have, so I have to really be able to hear the music and feel the music before I can really feel the lyrics. And I think this one, with the message changing from Love of My Life to Loss of My Life, and thus kind of the name of this one being an acronym, I think that made it pretty powerful, and it really did speak to me. I Can Do It With a Broken Heart is such a great song, and when I went through and did my second listen of the album, I ranked this one as an A tier because the verses were just kind of meh to me. Like the verses didn't really feel like they spoke to me in the same way that the pre-chorus and the chorus did. Because I have performed, I've been on stage a couple different times. It's all been small performances, but the thing that stood out to me about this one immediately was the fact that the music really has the same energy as preparing for a performance, where the verses are kind of that low energy state that you have before you get up on stage. Then the pre-chorus is when you're winding up to get up on stage. Either you're walking up on stage or you're waiting for the curtain to drop. And then the chorus is, it feels to me like how it feels to perform. Right, where it's fast, it's punchy, you're really dialed in the moment, it really has energy behind it. And I think that the power of this one to me, and I don't know, maybe this is being talked about, I'm not in the Swiftie talk or any of the rest of that, so I don't really know that this is being talked about. But to me, the more powerful part of this one, aside from the lyrics, is how the lyrics and the music work together to tell that whole story about performing even when you don't want to, or having to perform when you're in a situation where it's painful to do so. And that's been talked about by other performers. Taylor Swift certainly isn't the first one to talk about it. But this is one of the first songs that I could really relate to that talked about that type of thing. So I originally wanted to give this one an A tier, but I was listening to it as I was getting ready to sit down and put this tier list together. And I really want to bump this one up to an S tier. And I think this one's great. And I just love how this feels, the instrumentation that backs it, just the vibes. It really speaks to me because I've done performances and it's just so good. I like this one a lot. I think probably The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived kind of suffers from the same thing that happened earlier, where this one follows such an amazing song that it just sounds awful. Like, I really like the harmonies, and I think the harmonies are the thing that really stand out on this one and keep it from being like a really low F tier to me, because I think this one kind of sits at the border of F and D because the harmonies are so good. But the build, like, it's just not great, and the build to climax is good too. And I think that also works with the harmonies pretty well, but that's really all it has going for it. And following such a banger as I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, it sounds awful. Like, I just can't do it. The Alchemy was one that kind of surprised me, because I kind of figured it would be a couple bad ones in a row again, but this one I think is probably an S tier. I think that calling it the Alchemy is a little bit odd when she's really talking about chemistry. It's one of those moments where it's like, she's trying to be poetic, but it comes off just weird to me. I listen to a lot of metal music. I hear a lot of metaphor and poetry and all the rest that actually happens in metal music. And this just doesn't really stand up in terms of how it's written. That said, I think that musically this one is incredible, and I really like the structure and flow. And it's one of those that it stands out so well. The melody is so good. The chorus, it just flows from verse to chorus in like a very easy way. It sounds really good. I don't know how many other ways I can say something sounds good. I'm kind of getting hung up on saying it one particular way, but this one, I really like it. The lyrics are a little bit playful and kind of, making references to Travis Kelce and all the rest, which I know the Swifties are going nuts for. But this is one that I thought was actually really fun, and I really enjoyed listening to this one. I thought it was awesome. So I was going to give it like a border of S and A tier originally, but again, on that second re-listen to the album, this one's getting bumped up to an S. Clara Bow was one that had a really, really cool bass line, and the vibes of this one are good. I think the bass line is the thing that stands out the most to me. I sang bass in choir, and anything with a good bass line just really speaks to me, because basses usually get neglected in terms of voice, and I think in terms of music, you don't really always hear the bass featured as a prominent instrument, and it's really cool when an artist decides that they're going to feature a bass as a prominent instrument. So I think this one is awesome from the standpoint that the bass has a really, really prominent place in the song, but it's not my favorite on this album, and I don't want to end up with it being this super big, like, we have really good ones and really bad ones. I think there are some that are in between. This is one of those ones. I'm going to put it into a B tier. The melodies are really catchy, and the bass line is really catchy. I don't know that I would find myself singing this one a whole lot. I know that it's popped into my mind a few times, but I'm going to put this one right in the middle because it's good, but it's not as good as some of the other ones on this album. Black Dog is one I don't like a whole lot. This one's going right to D tier. It's not my vibe. Some people really like it. I know this one had some people screaming and crying and throwing up, but it just is not my thing. I'm Gonna Get You Back is a great song. I liked this one the moment I heard it. I think probably the synthesizer that really backs the verses, it really gets me. It's so cool. It's such a good auditory hook, and I guess there's no other type of hook but auditory in this particular case, but it's such a good hook. I really like the way that sounds. It's a really pleasant sounding song. I think that the ambience about it is awesome. I think that the structure is really good. For some reason, this one kind of reminds me of I Wish You Would from 1989. I don't know why, because they're very dissimilar songs, but something about, I think probably the rhythm and kind of the general vibe of the chorus really kind of draws a similarity, and since I've been doing my annual re-listen of all the Taylor Swift songs, that one really kind of sticks out to me. So I think this one is really good. I'm going to put this one up at an S tier. Just awesome song. The Albatross has kind of a hard act to follow with I'm Gonna Get You Back, so this one is going to be a C tier. It's a pleasant song. It's not my vibe. I'm not really a huge fan of the melody, though I do want to make a note here, given how the Swifties have been saying that if you don't like this album in its entirety, then you don't understand metaphors. As an example that I do in fact understand metaphors, there's a line in this song called where she says she's going to spread her wings like a parachute. Not only is that a metaphor, it's also a simile. It's both. The more you know. This one that's on screen, it has a long name that I'm for sure going to end up butchering even though I'm looking directly at it. It gets a mid kind of between C and D tier. See, I'm already struggling here with some of the... So this one gets that kind of that middle ground because I think it's pretty meh. And then How Did It End? Also meh. That one just goes straight to D tier. Just not really a fan of either of these. Like, they're pretty, but they're just not my vibe. So High School is one of those ones that kind of has cringy lyrics, and I cringed listening to the lyrics. I understand they're supposed to be kind of cringe, or at least that's what we're told to believe, but initially I gave this one a pretty high ranking. I was going to rank it right on the B and C tier line, but when I had to go back and listen to all this again, it's just for, continuity's sake, I realized I really wanted to rank this one lower, so I'm going to put this one in the D tier. I'm just not really a fan of the melody. The instruments are really cool, and I love the memes that have come out of this one, because the Touch Me While Your Bros Play Grand Theft Auto meme is just so wild to have in a song. This one would go right to F tier if the instrumentation that backed the melody wasn't so good, because I think the melody, it kind of grates on me and I don't like it. So the instruments save it from an F tier. So we are jumping right back into the memes with I Hate It Here. This is another one that has been roundly memed because of the line about the 1830s. It's another one that I'm not really a huge fan of. I think it's very meh. It's just not really my style. The instruments are really cool, which is saving it from going right to the bottom of D tier. But this one right on that D tier and C tier line just because the instruments are cool. Then coming right back in with another flopper, we've got Thank You, aIMee. I'm putting this one right in F tier. I'm not a fan at all. The melody just does not do it for me. I think this one's trash. I just really don't like this one. Then next up we have I Look in People's Windows. I think that one's D tier. I mean, it's okay, just not really for me. The Prophecy is also D tier. It's just very meh to me. It's just another one of those just kind of sad piano songs that seem to be all over this album. It doesn't really stand out. So we're coming back with more that are just not it for me. We have Cassandra, which is, I just don't like the melody. It really doesn't work for me. The instruments are nice, but the sad piano is starting to get kind of old at this point, so this one goes right to F tier. And then Peter is a similar story. This one's a little bit more interesting. I think the lyrics are kind of cool, and I kind of like the flow of this one, but I'm just so tired of the sad piano by this point of listening to it that this one is also going right to F tier. And I just can't really go with the lyrics. Even looking at the music video, the lyric videos for these, it's very hard for me to follow those lyrics because I dislike the music itself so much. Out of nowhere, we get The Bolter, which is immediate S tier. The way that this one opens up and the fact that the hook happens so fast and the hook is so catchy and the melody in general is so good, this one just gets catapulted right to S tier. I'm still not totally sure if I like this one a lot just because I'm so tired of the bland, sad piano that's been kind of plaguing this entire album, and this one just happens to be different, or if it's actually good. I'm not really sure. Either way, this one, I really enjoy it. That hook is just so good. It really speaks to me, and I like it a lot. It's awesome. I really like this one. This one's going in my playlists because it's I can imagine riding my motorcycle to this one. Incredible, just incredible. S tier all the way. Very happily S tier. Then immediately back to trash. I can't remember what this one sounds like, even though I just went through and re-listened to these all a couple of days ago. What I have in my notes is, quote, more womp womp piano, end quote. I really believe it. I remember, all I remember is coming off of the emotional high of listening to The Bolter and then coming to something that just did not work for me. It made me so sad, and I'm really sad that I have to put this one in an F tier because I don't want to end on a bad note, but this one, I guess we're not really ending on a bad note yet. This one just didn't speak to me. I didn't like it at all. Right to F tier. In a move that surprised even me, the Manuscript actually gets a pretty high ranking. This one's going right to the A tier, and while it's sad piano, and it's more of that stuff that I've been complaining about at a couple different points during this tier list, I think this one is better than the other ones and stands out a little bit more because the melody is really interesting, and the backing instruments are really interesting, and the fact that there's more than just the piano and like one or two synths maybe really makes this one stand out, and it feels like both because of the backing instruments, the melody, but then also because of the way that she sings it, this one feels like it has a lot of soul in it, and there's a lot of heart in it. And it's not like some of the other songs that are on here that just kind of feel empty. This one feels like there's emotion tied to it, and I can feel it, probably because of the way it's written, more so than the lyrics. But this is one I actually really enjoy. So this one's going right up to A tier, which is great. We're not ending on a super bad note. And so there we have kind of the end of this tier list, and here's kind of our final rankings of everything. If I were to rank this overall into, how would I rank this album itself on a tier list, I would put this one at a pretty solid C, which is where I had it originally when I first listened to it, and through my second playthrough of this album, I really have arrived at the same conclusion. And what makes me really sad as a longtime fan is that this is the first album I have liked less the second time I've listened to it. Like every other album of hers I've listened to, I've grown to appreciate them more on the second playthrough, like as soon as the second playthrough, I should say. And this one, even listening to it a second time, listening to a bunch of these songs a second time to kind of revisit some of my notes, like I just really can't get behind this one. I know there's a lot of people that really love it. This isn't a mark against you. If you really love this one, it's your favorite album, that's great. Somebody has to love it, right? I know there's a lot of fans of hers that really enjoy this one, and I think that's great for them and for her. It's just not my thing. These are just my personal views. I'm still a fan of Taylor Swift. I think a lot of her stuff is great. The 6 songs that I've listed up here as S-tier songs, I absolutely will listen to again and will continue to listen to because they are so good. I don't think any of the A's that are on here I'm really going to listen to again, with the possible exception of Down Bad, actually, because that one is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Like, it's not a great song in my book, but I really do kind of like it, so that one's probably one I'm going to listen to a lot more. And one of the things that I wanted to do coming through here as I was re-listening to all the Taylor Swift albums is give this a relistenability rating, which is going to be a percent number of songs off the album that I would listen to again. So for this one, there's a total of 31 songs on the album, and there's a total of 6 I am absolutely going to come back to. So that's about a 20% relistenability on this one, which is kind of low in for me. Like, I think this might be a little bit higher than some of the other ones. As I go through this, I'm going to start doing this with all the albums, and I'm kind of hoping that in the future I'll be able to do more of this, because this was actually really fun to put together, and it was really great to be able to go back through and listen to her music with more intentionality. So this has been a really fun thing. I really hope you guys enjoy it. I don't know how much reach this is going to get because my channel's still pretty small, but hopefully it's something you like. I'm probably going to get some hate for this one if it gets more than a couple of views. I'm really looking forward to kind of digging into this some more. I'm planning on doing like an album tier list where I tier list all of her albums, because I'm listening to all of them, the holiday collection included. The only one that I'm not really going to be listening to is the Walmart exclusive album from back in like 2007, just because it's like a remixes of songs that were already there, and I don't really have much interest in listening to that one, and it's pretty short. But everything, the Taylor's versions, the not Taylor's versions, just because I've been such a fan of hers for a long time, so every time she does a new album release, I go back and listen to everything. And usually about once a year, I'll go through on a Taylor Swift binge and just listen to as much Taylor Swift music as I can get my hands on. So this has been really fun. Really hope you enjoy it. And if this made you angry in any way, or if you agree with something that's in here, or if you hate Taylor Swift, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. I'm kind of trying to think of some fun ways to work some jokes into the like, comment, and subscribe. I have a list for video games, but nothing really for music. So thanks, guys, and have a good one.